Okay, now we have kind of a special tape here, and it's called The Prophecies because it's based on a book that Billy wrote called The Prophecies. But the prophecies, most of them anyway, don't come from him. They're a collection of information from different sources. Throughout the contact notes, in several cases and several times, that they gave him some prophetic things that would happen in the near future. For instance, in 75, Billy asked for any predictions for the coming year. And they would give him some predictions, usually just within the next coming year's time for the general area. But most of these predictions were all based just on political events and maybe a large snowfall causing damage, local crime, things like that. If there was any political problems, maybe leading to a death or an assassination, they would usually comment on things like that. And those prophecies generally would always come from Semjase. Billy also got prophetic information from other levels. For instance, when he was younger, during his time of training with Ascot from the Tao universe, in 1956 she gave him a series of prophetic things also, which we went over somewhat on the contact notes. And that primarily dealt with a span of time dealing with several assassination and murders of political figures, which she felt was necessary actually for events to actually unfold the way that they were supposed to. Billy also received prophetic information from what's called the Patali level. As I talked earlier on one of the tapes, on the creation tapes, about the different levels that man can actually evolve to, the highest level that we evolve to as a spirit form is called the Patali level. Some people think of this as a group consciousness level. Billy was able to receive prophetic information also from this level, which was kind of filtered down to him through the High Council of the Pleiades worlds, and that information was received by him and passed on also. So we have information from several different sources here. Ascot, Semjase, Patali, and even Billy himself, who understands some forms of future prediction, have all gone together to put together this little book. Now, some of the prophecies, of course, are from conversations when he had in the ships and so forth, but the prophecies that came from the Patali level were of a different kind. When you receive transmissions from a higher life form like this, they don't come in the form of language. They come in the form of symbols, and that comes through on what's called spiritual telepathy. Spiritual telepathy, unlike material or primary telepathy, is very, very long range, and it doesn't come in an audible form. It comes in a series of symbols which the person who's a student understands it then must then convert the symbols into language and tell the story properly. So one has to be trained and understand the symbol language very well to be able to do that. When Billy was very young, part of his consciousness and memory and abilities and knowledge of the symbol language was unlocked, and over the years of study and so forth, he learned more and more about this, so he was able then to convert the symbols into language. Billy's own predictions are not the result of any type of future vision, but Kabbalistic calculations. The transmissions that he gets from ETs and higher spiritual levels are more accurate and far more sweeping as far as the type of information they can get. Billy then receives these types of transmissions in the spiritual language of symbols, and then he translates them into our language. This is different, he says, than the abilities of seers, he calls, who we normally, some other prophets and seers who give us, in our modern times, give us prophetic statements. He says they see the future usually through their own psychic abilities, and it isn't from the spiritual language that he's talking about. The problem therein is that without use of obtaining information through the symbol language, the prophecies generally will always be a mixture of the own individual's egos, fears, and desires, and they're never very accurate. I think we're seeing that in our own time. There's an awful lot of people, psychics, and people predicting things, one thing and the other, but they're never really very accurate. Maybe they are accurate on a few things, and then they're way off on others. So there certainly isn't any continuing high probability of accuracy by anybody that I know of. So what Billy's talking about is there can be an exact science to seeing the future, because such does exist, but it involves the knowledge of a particular language of symbols that most people, or practically no one else on the planet, really has any knowledge of. Interesting thing about the prophecies, the way they're written, and in many areas they're very vague, and in many areas it kind of prompts you to ask more and want to know more about it. But Billy says that he doesn't make any attempt to explain the prophecies any more in detail than he's gone into here, because he believes only a person who can understand the truth himself, when it is given to him in hidden form, is able to bear or tolerate it, is how he puts it. Which means that the prophecies themselves have some hidden meanings in different areas, and are a little hard to understand to most of us. But for one who understands prophecy, and one who understands future vision, or may know some of the symbols, they would be able to unravel these mysteries on their own. And his point is well taken, that if we don't have the level of knowledge to understand it, then we probably shouldn't even have the information. He makes an analogy as to our stomachs, that just like our stomach, which is only capable of digesting digestible foods, it can't digest poisons and rocks and other things that you stick in it, that the human understanding can only take in what it can comprehend, that which it can understand, or what is digestible in an understanding form. If you try to take in information that's too high for you or too difficult to understand, it's just going to overpower you and probably cause you frustration, irritation, or whatever. Billy is also able to calculate a person's death and his past life, something that he was taught and understands quite well. But he says these are the sort of things that when he speaks to someone and they have good reason to want to know about these things, and he's more than happy to provide that. But he's always cautious about letting predictions out too clearly, or letting certain people know certain things, because it leads, unfortunately, to fear or whatever in that individual. Predictions, let me clear up a couple things now. Predictions, what we call a prediction, that's a future event. These are computed with Kabbalistic calculations, and they lead to very exacting results. Predictions always come to pass, he says, very absolutely accurately. That's because a prediction rests on an established fact, and then proceeds to a certain outcome or effect that has to take place because of the factual knowledge that it started with. So it's kind of like logic. If you take a logical statement and allow it to move forward, it comes to a logical conclusion by virtue of its own clarity of thought and truth. So prediction seems to be something like that. If you start with an established fact, you can calculate then the result, more or less, of that prediction, or that fact that's been started in motion. So it's very exacting. Prophecy, though, is slightly different, he says. They're different, and a prophecy is generally just like a warning function. It can show an end result, but that result might come from certain facts if there's no change happens in a certain time. So it's like a warning about something to happen, but free will could come into play there. But if no free will comes in, or nothing gets involved, then the prophecy becomes a prediction, and he says will surely come to pass. So we have some difference here between a prediction and a prophecy. A prediction is something that's almost absolute, that can be calculated based on known facts and will almost have a positive outcome. A prophecy is more of a warning and can actually be interfered with. But if nothing happens to change a prophecy, then it becomes a prediction by virtue of the fact that nothing was done to stop it, and it also will come to pass. Prophecy also is quite variable according to the free will of men, and that's the point he was trying to make in the basic difference between them, that when we hear a prophetic statement, it's a warning about something, and we have the possibility of maybe doing something about it. Therefore, it's not certain that a prophesied event will take place if it's changed by a good evolution. And what he means by that is that this means that a person's evolution, or in other words, your continued growth of knowledge, accumulation of spiritual